Terrific. Welcome to the July 25th, 2018 Select Board meeting. I think we have a slightly damp room from a lovely summer shower. The first item on the agenda is to have the town administrator read the agenda with any proposed changes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we'll amend or approve the agenda and then have a period of public comment, and I don't believe there are any of those
There are none.
signed up. And then consideration of consent agenda that includes a payroll warrant, a one-day liquor license for Pauline Bound's wedding date, September 15th, 2018. There are no minutes to approve, and the next meeting is set for August 16th, 2018 at 7 p.m. Then an update on current road projects and pending road projects with Sean Colleen, the CM&D Director / Facilities Manager. And then consideration of various appointments. Town Accountant Sharon McPherson to expire June 15th, 2021. Public Safety Committee appointment Neil McPherson to expire June 15th, 2021. Council on Aging Susan Pierce for a term to expire June 15th, 2021. And Penny Nichols for a term to expire June 15th, 2021. And then appointments of building inspectors, John McGordy Wiring Inspector to expire June 15th, 2019. Thomas Frasca Plumbing and Gas Inspector to expire June 15th, 2019. John Rose Deputy Plumbing and Gas Inspector to expire June 15th, 2019. Then election workers from Carol Marple, Town Clerk. In consideration of signing the September 11th, 2018 election warrant, Carol Marple, Town Clerk, which I think that is, we should amend that to September 4th. And then consideration of financial operational matters, financial update with Sharon McPherson, Finance Director / Accountant. Consideration of ADA Administrative Requirement Policy. That's just updating Section 2, Public Notification and Grievance Procedure for the Open Space and Recreation Plan. Then consideration of designation of William Bradford Homer Douse Day with George Fisk. Item 5 should be removed and is being rescheduled for September. Under routine business, Town Administrator Report, Selectmen Reports, and then executive session with an adjournment not to return to public session under MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21(3), to discuss strategy with respect to potential litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the town, and the chair so declares, and it's related to the library. And that's it.
Terrific. One quick question. I don't know Ann Nichols. Is her nickname Penny with an E?
Panny. No, Panny with an A.
Oh, it is Penny with an A?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Just a comment. On the election warrant, first you figured out the election is actually being held in the rest of the state on September 4th rather than September 11th. But in my packet, there was no election warrant.
She's bringing it with her.
Yeah.
Okay. It's kind of nice to read those
I know.
before the meeting. Thank you.
I'm not sure if the, if it could be reviewed tonight and voted at the next one, or I don't know if we have time.
We do have time, but it should be the same as the other ones I've seen in other towns, so
Okay.
I can review it on the fly.
On the fly. Okay.
Any other amendments to the agenda? Motion to approve? So moved. Second? All in favor? Terrific. Let's go to the consent agenda. Everyone have a chance to look at the payroll warrant, the one-day liquor license for a wedding, and
Move approval of the consent agenda.
second. All in favor? Perfect. George, I think we're going to get to you in less than an hour, so that's our goal here. Okay, our CM&D Director, Facilities Manager Sean Colleen is up next with an update on current road projects and pending road projects.
He has a handout that should be at our seats.
Yes.
There's a late file item.
Where's that?
Okay.
I was just looking for this guy. Oh, it's just a one pager. I'm not sure if I got one. or
Do you
not.
have one, Mike?
I may not have one.
Sure.
I'll look on it. Oh, yeah, I do. I have one. It's snuck in.
Yeah, don't touch mine then.
I'm not.
Ready?
Okay, Sean, you're up.
So this year, we jumped on
early road projects. Mostly because we had a handful of small ones, which are usually tough to get this time of year, because the crews are out trying to hammer out some pretty big projects, so we jumped on a couple early. And they were also, there's a couple in there that wouldn't have qualified for Chapter 90, so we were in the fortunate position where we had capital money, and we were well ahead of the Chapter 90 allocation anyway, so. What we've already done, most people probably saw quite a few of these anyway. We fully reclaimed Cemetery Lane, fixed a bunch of the drainage that's there, and put 2 coats on that. Sawin, we did, as well as the intersection down at Sawin and Sanger at the bottom of the hill. Old Orchard and a small piece of Page Farm that didn't get redone when Route 16 was done. We also did. Sorry, we got a fire call. We ground those and just fixed the structures that needed it and paved back over. We didn't fully reclaim that, but just to paint the picture, there was a couple houses on Old Orchard that were in, the road was in such disrepair this winter, we were plowing the road into the people's driveways, so they couldn't even snow blow their driveways without us kind of punching them back open. So it wasn't a very good situation. That's why we ended up having to jump on that early. Bullard Street, we caught before we had to grind it. So about 90% of it, just past Bliss's driveway all the way to the Millis line, we just put another 1.5 inch top coat on it. And then there was a piece that was a bad sinkhole this winter in one of the first storms out right in front of Sitco. Most people don't realize that's the old Route 27. And it's gone quite a while without any repair because it looks like a parking lot, but it's the old road, so we fixed that. We fixed some drainage issues that the town owns that are in there.
Sean, on your list, you have a couple of roads that you said were cold planed. For those of us that are ignorant, can you just
Yeah.
briefly explain what that is?
So cold planing is what we've seen the past few years, where they just deck off the top, and you're used to driving over that. It's all grooved. It looks terrible. It usually goes through one layer and sometimes in between a layer and a layer and a half. You do it when you know the road is in a state that the next coat might fail. Other towns would normally do it when they have a lot of structures or you have curbing and you need to keep your height. We normally don't in many of our roads, so that's why we did Old Orchard. There were several that were in such disrepair, or the drainage was in such, the grading wasn't good, that the full reclamation is when you pulverize it all the way into the dirt. You mix the dirt with pulverized it, regrade it, and compact it.
With the
That's-
cold planing, can you recycle the asphalt? Can it get collected and?
Yeah, it usually goes back to the plant, or we take it back to
Right.
our yard, or several other places to get rid
Thanks.
of it. It
Sorry.
doesn't add much value. You're basically giving away your road, but you do it when you have to. And then conversely, shimmed is basically when the road is, if you're not gonna plane it, but there's a lot of holes or ruts or wide cracks that the top coat is just gonna fall into, you shim it first. We did it on Bullard Street where we basically just skimmed over the bad before the top coat.
Thanks.
We did kind of one of each. The only thing there that we haven't done, that people haven't seen in a handful of years, is chip sealing. We used to do a lot of chip sealing. Most of our roads are chip sealed. They last a lot longer, and they're significantly less expensive. So I'm gonna segue to that. We've spent this year to date, out of the capital money, and some of our budget, $341,000 on the projects we did.
Can I make a comment at this point?
Sure.
Governor Baker has submitted legislation to appropriate an additional $40 million for road work. That would be distributed under the Chapter 90 formula using a slightly different procedure. You actually have to apply for it, so it's in the form of a grant, but the town would get the money. So a 20% increase would be about $52,000 or $53,000 of additional money that'll be coming to you before October for you to use for whatever purposes. And the second comment I'd make about money is that the President of the United States made a disaster declaration for the third of the storms that hit our area in March. This is March 13th, I think, somewhere in that area, and included Middlesex County, which includes Sherborn, which means that your costs and expenses that were incurred in March of this year should be reimbursed at 75% by the United States sometime probably close to the end of their fiscal year, which again is October. So there should be some more money heading your way.
That's good. That'll come back to the town, obviously. Won't fit into my budget, but we spend a significant amount of money, as everyone knows, cleaning up from March, since we didn't really finish till May or June. And a lot of that's covered. It's not just the snow removal. We get to claim against that, the tree damage, some of the roadway damage, and of course the cleanup efforts. The extra Chapter 90 will come in handy for next year. So what's right now in our Chapter 90 account is $304,000, almost $305,000. There was $50,000 that hung over from an earlier project to supplement what was allocated this year. We've looked at a handful of things this year on what to hit. The smaller projects we did were a lot of labor. They were very labor intensive. There was a lot of prep work and still ongoing finish work afterwards. So the crew's been stretched pretty thin. There's a few others that obviously need. Elliott Street is one of the oldest main roads we have. It was done at least 19, if not 20 years ago. The state did that. They did Natick and Sherborn at the same time. Everybody I've had looked at it said, yeah, you might make it through this winter okay, but that's it. It wasn't really on the priority list, but it's fallen off fast. And it's not a road that you can just let the potholes sit because people are hitting them at a higher speed. So the intent there, if we can, it'll be too late this year to try to rubber chip seal. They cannot do that in the cold. And doing road work in Sherborn in the fall is tough because trees, leaves, limbs, and everything else ends up in it. And when you rubber chip seal, you have to, 30 days, 45 days ahead of it, you have to do any patching so it can cure out. The intent will probably be to patch anything this fall. Cross our fingers, hope it makes it through the winter without cracking too bad, and then be early next spring with this year's money with a rubber chip seal. It's significantly cheaper than repaving, and it'll hold the road for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and then the benefit there is we can just go with like a microchip thin layer over it and hope the cracks don't come up through like Route 27 did a few years ago.
Sean, is that the whole length? of it?
Elliott?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you gonna need, on any of these, are you gonna need orders of conditions and things like that?
What's that?
You need permitting for this from conservation on any of this?
Nothing out of the ordinary, no.
Okay. I'm just thinking in
There's a
terms of,
general notification that comes through
okay.
from us to them on a DEP form. And then the other two we're weighing in are two long stretches of road that we all know pretty well, Hunting Lane and Nason Hill. I prefer to save those rather than try to grind them all the way down because it'll be, I mean, Hunting Lane, if you tried to grind it and rebuild it, would be more than a year's worth of Chapter 90, and no one's ever gonna wanna spend that kind of money on one road.
Isn't that the one with ledges actually popping up?
Yeah, there's rocks.
Well, yeah,
Surface.
again.
Might be
there's-
tough to actually.
There's a fair
reclaim
amount
that.
of prep work we have to do, which is when we gotta go out and hammer that ledge or chase after those rocks.
The reclaim machine goes 12, 18 inches down, and you probably break the machine.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, for people that don't drive on it, don't appreciate it, but you can imagine what that feels like when you hit it with a plow.
No?
So there's a lot of maintenance, just keeping Hunting Lane drivable. Nason Hill's right behind it. There's a lot of traffic on Nason Hill, a lot more than most people know. So both of those we're looking at, we have contractors looking at, seeing what we can do. We don't want to rebuild either of them totally. We'd like to get them in shape so we can chip seal, whether it be late this year or early next year with the chip seal.
Sean, we had a discussion last meeting about a potential development project that presumably is going to be accessed from the lower part of Hunting Lane, or could be accessed from the lower part of Hunting Lane. Does it make sense to rebuild that area before anything happens, if that project's on the horizon?
We typically, in town over the last 10 or 12 years, have held off road projects somewhat against our better judgment because of potential road developments.
Yeah.
I would hesitate to ever do that. We did it with Maple Street, and Maple Street got worse in the year and a half that it took to decide that we should have paved it before we lost it. It's not gonna have that much of an effect. If that project goes through, that whole section to the tracks will get, it's in bad repair. I may not do that section because of the way the stone wall's actually falling over into the road. I actually talked to the developer a little bit about that. I might just start from the tracks and do the rest. But that's a couple hundred feet versus the 7,000 feet I think the road is.
Right.
The rest of it I wouldn't hold off, and I would never hold off a project because of the potential truck traffic, because it's usually do more damage than good by leaving it.
And this would just be repaving on Hunting, no drainage improvements or?
Some
Regrading.
slight ones, but they're drainage, because the road gets washed out.
Right.
It's berms and stuff. It's not significant drainage work. There's actually some drainage there, but it doesn't do any good when the mud's coming off of the hill.
Right, or when the water's washing across the road.
Right.
Okay.
So, just the paving effort and doing berms, like we typically do, is gonna fix a lot of that. And then, not sure if anyone's noticed, but there's quite a few catch basins that are failing around town. That's gonna take some significant effort to catch before the winter, and we have to fix those. Or we're falling into them all winter. And there's also sidewalks, that have deteriorated over the years or got torn up by the spring storms. Sidewalks and berms. The older neighborhoods, it's tough to keep the berms on the road because they weren't really keyed in the way we do now. So spring storms you get a little overzealous with the plow and the curbing ends up in someone's front lawn. We have that all over town, some from this winter, some from just years of deterioration, but in the neighborhoods, people don't really like 40 feet of dirt for the sidewalk. So we're gonna have to go around and fix some of those.
And that expense will increase because the state's actually considering defining the rule that as soon as you improve 10 feet of sidewalk, then the full thing has to be ADA compatible with the concrete slope ramps and the tactile strips and everything. So you can
Right.
expect that cost to go up.
So
Well, is that
we
the
carefully
now?
don't improve them.
Not quite yet.
Right, you'd either want to beat that requirement or improve them to the full standards, right?
Right, but if it's gone to dirt because we plowed it up, they're gonna let you fix it without calling that an improvement, to some degree.
Can I ask a question? The tactile strips, is that an ADA requirement, or is
Yeah.
that a transportation? Oh,
It's
okay.
ADA.
Oh, okay.
ADA / Mass Architectural Board.
Okay.
You know, it's for the visually impaired. That's why they're there.
The bubbled ones?
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
Either red or yellow.
okay. Thanks.
So that's about it for upcoming road projects. Nothing is firmed up.
But just
We're kind of mid-year, so
one question. I think in the spring, every year, we approve how the Chapter 90 money is going to be spent for the upcoming year.
right.
Are these amendments to the plan that was voted? or is this
There was no
just?
plan.
We didn't vote a plan this
We
year.
haven't voted a plan in 2 years. This is, I also haven't touched the Chapter 90. This is the Chapter 90 that just came through. Moving forward. We're about half a year off. If that makes sense to you.
Well, what I'm trying to figure out is whether there needs to be a motion to approve these roads being done.
No, because I haven't given you anything to approve. If that makes any sense. I don't have a number for you.
And you're not sure you're gonna do these projects yet?
No.
Okay,
I'm not sure which ones will wash out and which ones we can get on this year.
all right.
I guess
so-
the question following up on Paul would be, shouldn't you come in with a plan to have us at least endorse it?
Yeah, I'm
About
gonna,
how that's, okay. Do you know when?
hopefully by the next meeting.
Okay, all right.
Depends when the next meeting is.
Just one question on that as well. Paul, you said this additional money that you were talking about is going to be, do we have to apply for it with specific projects?
Well, that's what you do with Chapter 90 funds anyway. You ask this. It's basically the same process, but it's just a little reverse. Right now, you just don't go out and spend the money and then hope you get reimbursed. You clear it through,
Right.
what are we, Division 3 here?
Yeah, and you get each project approved as you're about to do it. Or you might get it approved before the funding's there, but
Okay.
they're still approving the scope of the project. And it wouldn't be a $50,000 project, it would be it could be an $80,000 project. We were gonna run out of Chapter 90, now they're gonna fund it, and they'll basically, it may leave 30 in the kitty.
Well,
But-
the legislation also hasn't passed. The governor's proposed it, but it's getting favorable reviews up and down.
Right.
Both people in the House and the Senate have told me they're gonna vote for it. So I would expect it to pass.
It also increases Complete Streets funding, and we were successful in getting Complete Streets grants. There'll be more opportunities for that as well.
Right. Well, and one grant I didn't put on here, probably should have. We did get the, Complete Streets grant, the first phase awarded. So what overlays on this and what plays into how much work we're gonna try and bite off ourselves this year, is also the prep work for the first few projects, which are now funded and we're committed to, which is the Main Street sidewalk, the rail trail, which, some of which we have to, subcontract, but there still tends to be quite a bit of work. The rail trail, we get to do some of that.
Well, on the Main Street sidewalk, every time I drive by it, I see the wall there that's at the Peace Abbey that was supposed to be moved. And I think David was working on that.
I think Gino has been mostly involved with
Yeah.
you.
It's someone in that planning board's hands. They've handed I'm waiting for the finalized plan back from Green International, for the sidewalk, but the plan for the wall is done. But it's somewhat out of my hands to get the builder to do that. That's been Gino and John.
A couple years ago, the Historic Commission actually made an opinion that it was a historic wall, and therefore you need approval from them to actually do the move. I'm not sure if they have actually opined in that, if they've actually made a decision about the move on that or not.
I don't think they have. I think he has to return to them and get permission. He got permission the same, I guess, for the library renovation, but they didn't give the permission for the wall at the time.
Yep. But they did make an opinion, they thought it was a historic wall, I do know that.
Well, the idea was not to discard the wall, but simply to move it off of our property so that we could fit a sidewalk.
I remember, yeah, because I presented that before them, but they still wanted to chime in for the move.
Yeah, we were both on the planning board when we were talking about that.
Yep.
My frustration is that this is something that was a long time in the making. And we
Well,
did get,
there's a contract, too.
yeah, there's an agreement with the developer that he was going to move off our right-of-way.
Right.
And here we are now have funding to actually do something with the sidewalk, and we still have the wall where it's been. Nothing has moved.
And the works must be completed by September 2019 for the Complete Streets funding. So there's, the clock's ticking.
So David, can you get maybe town council to pull out that agreement? And
I don't think there's any question with the agreement. We're just waiting for the engineering design. That's, as far as I know, they've been told.
So is the
that they
engineering
won't-
design is needed to show where the wall's going to?
Right.
Do they have the permit to move the wall? Sounds like
No.
they need a permit.
They don't.
So shouldn't
don't know
that
if
stuff
we-
be, shouldn't that be
They
starting? I mean, we,
have a plan that Green did.
yeah.
I believe they need permission from the Historic Commission. Because they, unless we somehow appeal that decision, or that opinion that is a historic wall.
Who's rendered an opinion? Did they have a hearing on that? Were we notified as the property owner?
We weren't
I
the
don't
property owner
remember,
yet.
and I don't remember a council opinion. I don't,
Well, it's always been our right of way.
yeah.
No, but isn't there an easement, isn't Abbey Road conveying an easement to the city? I'm not sure that that's within the, well, either way, these are level of details that probably don't need to be vetted right now, but just, there is, I don't think it's as straightforward as putting it. I believe you do have to go to the Historic Commission to actually move that wall still, if it hasn't been done. I haven't tuned in for it in the last couple of years since Chuck and I went before the commission there.
A long time ago.
It was very well spelled out in the land swap.
Yeah, and my only point, David, is, and just following up on what Eric said, it's a project, and like any project in this town, there's lead time items. And we've got a tradition of not paying attention to those and then getting jammed up or having to fix things afterwards. This is one where we know there's gonna be a lead time item because Eric just talked about it, assuming there is, and we also know the funding's running out because Eric just talked about it. And we've had umpteen discussions with the developer, so he knows what the requirement is. This process should be moving along already so that it's shovel-ready when the plans are done and the funding is available.
Okay.
So, I mean, somebody's got to take ownership of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sean and I and Gino talk
Okay.
regularly about it. You've met over on site.
All right.
They're, as far as from the developer's side, they're not going to do anything until they see the engineering plan.
When's the engineering gonna, I mean,
They have it. They've had it since before I started.
who has it?
Gino and John and the developer.
So they have the engineering
I've been in no
plans.
position to say, move the wall.
They have the plans.
There's a plan. And they need to come back with an engineered wall plan, and
All right, so,
I'll give John a call. I mean, this is a long time coming, so.
it is. Much more urgent. You didn't ask for this, but I put it in there.
trees.
We have trees falling. Just so everyone's aware, the typical year, we would go out and do a tree assessment, and there isn't really a big, there normally isn't a different list. There's just a list of these are the trees that need to come down. We did strictly a completely dead tree list because we knew as the gypsy moths or the caterpillars were out defoliating all the oaks, we knew there was a period of time where you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a dead oak and an oak that just lost all its leaves. So we got out ahead of that, so there wouldn't be an argument of that tree will come back, wait till next year. It just, got beat up. The list is 500 strong of dead oaks. Like, didn't foliate one leaf. That's more than 10 times what we'd probably ever seen in 1 year. Not that all of those were alive last year, but a fair amount of them were. They've mostly given up from the years of drought, and obviously 3 hard hits from the gypsy moths. In Paul's neighborhood, there's more than 100 on Bullard Street alone. So, obviously the public is aware of it. They keep looking up and they're calling me, they're calling the town, they're calling the police, they're concerned. I'm concerned, everyone should be concerned.
I sent one to David, and he sent it to you. But
Right.
my real intent was for it to go to Eversource,
And it did.
because it's, Eversource told me they're hot to trot to get this stuff done.
Right. So I've had a lot of discussions with Eversource. As of 3 weeks ago, they were due to be here this week with the big red Stanley trucks that were here all last fall to get working. And they also, after some urging from me, they had some other crews that have been working out in the western part of the state from either Louisiana or Tennessee. I'm not sure where they're from. They were probably going to pull them in. Some other things happened at Eversource, and we're not going to see anybody probably till September. They are still coming. They are still going to put pretty significant effort into town. They're not going to come anywhere near 500 trees. I'm trying to get a commitment of which ones they're going to get. I don't want to go taking a tree down that they're about to take down, because we don't pay for the trees that they take down. We don't pay for the tree. We don't pay for the police detail. They take it down because it's a risk to them.
Any of these require hearings, John?
Well, it's debatable whether a completely dead tree that's about to fall needs a hearing.
Does not. A dead tree does not.
It's
The,
deemed
uh,
hazardous.
We've already released a list to
Was
Stanley
there-
that we thought they were going to be taking.
If the tree warden deems it as hazardous, essentially a DN one's about to fall down.
More importantly, we don't have the budget to make a huge dent in that list. At the current rate, we'll probably use up our budget on kind of the emergency calls. An oak tree on Washington Street last night just shed the top 40 feet of itself, fell right on the road, actually hit a car. Unfortunately, it didn't take the whole tree down, so now we're stuck with probably about a $2,000 takedown. But we can't really leave it.
But it's not that Eversource won't take down 500 trees. From what they've said to me, they'd be happy to take down 500 trees. The problem is the logistics. So they may start with the intent of trying to take down 500 trees. If they start in September, they'll probably take the usual time period, the contractors, all of that stuff. They'll probably get 200 done before winter. They'll do the rest later. But their incentive is that it's a lot easier for them and their crews to not have to try and do tree work in the middle of a blizzard when public safety is already compromised.
I'm aware of all that. I honestly talked to them today. There's nothing stopping them except their own processes and procedures. I've been on the phone with them every week asking them, when are you coming? Here's a list. And they intend to get here, but it's not gonna be till September. And you're right, if they start in September, they won't get 200 trees down before October, November. And, I mean, they'll keep going. They went right through last winter. They were taking trees down the day after storms, and it had nothing to do with emergency work. It was just, Stanley was still picking away at a list.
Without getting into the details, they have issues with their own vendors as well, as far as,
Currently it's issues with their own vendors. It's not us. It will be on us. If we go through the process they went through last year. We delayed them by 3 or 4 months because we had 3 tree hearings for every tree. And the list went from 200 and some odd trees to under 180, and we lost track of how many of those have come down since then. But last night's tree had a blue dot on it. It was ready to come down. Eversource was going to pay for it.
Well, as we just discussed, if it's a dead tree, you don't need any hearings.
And that's why I have a list of dead trees.
500.
Yeah.
Are any of these trees residual? Are they dying or dead due to the March 13th storm?
So we can get insurance.
Just
About
curious.
498 of them.
Just curious.
Good.
No, unfortunately, no. It might be the 2016 drought and
What's that?
gypsy moths, but
Neil?
some of these are 200-year-old oaks that just,
I think it's great that the town is having a conversation about that, because I drive on Sean, I see the same thing. I see a bunch of dead trees up there. And as we know, over the past 10 years, there's been a number of near misses where trees suggest it would be great if Eversource is gonna remove 500 trees, but I think every community wants all of these trees removed, and Eversource typically removes trees that are in danger of impacting their infrastructure. They don't usually take care of many, many trees that are off on the other side of the road, not impacting their infrastructure. So my only suggestion becomes, I don't think this is a short-term issue, this is something that's been building over the years, and we should probably think about a multi-year plan to start addressing these, prioritizing these trees, to get these down, whether or not Eversource does. Because if Eversource doesn't get these down, and one of these days it falls on a car and it kills somebody, I would think there might be some liability for the town of Sherborn, clearly becoming a bigger and bigger issue. Last point becomes, there's a lot of what I call widowmakers, of big branches hanging in trees over the roads right now. And I would just suggest, I think those probably should be prioritized, because those fall on a car, we already know that they're broken free, that those could create significant damage, that are gonna fall just down.
And that's consistent with everything you've been telling us the past couple times you've been in here, too.
Yep.
Right. And we've been getting crews in to get the widowmakers down since this winter.
Yeah.
That's what happened to 75 Maple Street yesterday. There's a piece of an oak that was hanging over the road.
That's what split the tree?
Yeah, you saw it. You can just see the remnants of it.
It's quite a gouge.
That was a big mess.
Terrific. Want to finish up with the police station town hall?
Before you get that, the thing that I was most curious about on your list is item 3C. The
You like that?
The mystery item.
I thought you'd fill that in.
It was really intriguing. I thought, you're gonna surprise us with something. What was
That's
it?
about when the building inspector called me and said he wanted to go check out the library. That's not on my list. So the police station, the HVAC project, we replaced, there was 5 furnaces and air conditioners. We replaced them with 6. Made some significant improvements to the airflow, the air quality in there. That project went very well. They're doing the final fine-tuning adjustments on the balancing, and it's done and pretty successful. Prior to that, we did the roof over last winter, that had plagued that building for years with leaks. Not the entire roof, but there was a flat roof out back that had to be done before the air conditioners could get done. Jumping to this building, we've done some HVAC controls upgrades here. I don't know if you've noticed, it's a little more comfortable in here.
Including this room. Thank you very
It's
much.
also quieter, Sean.
Huh?
It's also quieter.
Quiet?
Quieter.
That's because that doesn't need to run.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's good.
So that actually went pretty well and was successful. It's not flawless. It's still the system that was put in 2000, but it's working a lot better and more efficient. The fire station, we put that out to bid. We obviously awarded that. We've started that project. It looks like it's at a standstill. It's not. We had to open it up. It was a deconstruction and then reconstruction, so there's steel that has to be fabricated. There's doors that had to be ordered, but we needed to verify all the dimensions, so the doors are now ordered. The steel's being manufactured.
What's the timeline for completion, just approximately?
Sometime in September. The doors, are 4 weeks out, so they're kind of staging some of the work for that. They don't want to expose the building without doors for longer than they have to. It's going to go for some time without the overhead doors, but,
Terrific.
so, that would put you through August, and we're probably going to end up re-siding most or all the building, and the whole thing will get painted.
Terrific. Any questions for Sean on
Yeah.
roads? It has to be on the
we're building
roads. No, it has to be roads.
Roads?
No,
We're building?
go ahead.
This is a great list, and thanks for the presentation and the update, which we should do probably on a regular basis. But we also have a capital improvement plan, and it would be good to have somebody, I don't know if it's Sharon or Diane or David or Sean, but to have somebody correlate what's on that plan to what's been done, so we get a progress report that's actually in relation to the plan that the town has for these building projects. We can see where we are in relation to the schedule and the spending that we anticipated for these years.
Well, I've thought, we'll put together like a pipeline that shows where they are in the process as far as, so you can see the approved contracting, blah,
Well, there's
blah.
that, David, but we also have that kind of master capital plan. This year, we're gonna do this much. We're
Right.
gonna do these things. Next year, we're gonna do that much. We're gonna do these things. We should be able to either have a grid where the boxes are checked off when the work's completed, or something to track both spending and completion of these projects. Because otherwise, you get to next year and you're still doing last year's projects. I mean, if we've got a plan which the town paid for, which we all thought was a good plan, we should be measuring progress to that plan.
So you're talking timelines and budgets.
I think so, yeah. And I'm not looking to make more work for people, but I just think this is a great list, but it's a list in isolation. And if we didn't talk to you as regularly as we do, it wouldn't even make as much sense as it does.
Right.
This plan is really the context for all these building projects. We should be talking to the plan and presenting to the plan.
And we have that,
I know you
obviously.
do. I know you're
Obviously, the
following.
difficulty is the albatross on the hill,
Yeah, of course.
kind of jumbled up the plan a little bit.
I mean, be clear, I'm not saying one way or the other or complaining that things on the plan aren't getting done. I just
Right.
want to know what's getting done in relation to what was on the plan. And if stuff's not getting done because there are other things that are become more pressing, we ought to make an adjustment in the plan or at least see what's happened.
Right.
It's just a
No, it is. It's an
Measure-
awesome grid.
tracking
It,
and-
it actually takes a little bit of time to take that grid and shrink
Sure.
it down to presentable.
but I would like to see that at some
Yeah.
point on a presentation like this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Probably less frequently than, I mean, you're kind of updating us every quarter or so on these.
Yeah.
The roads and building projects.
Yeah, maybe the
Sim-
next time.
It's maybe semi-annually or annually
Yeah,
on
yeah,
the
I
capital
think that's right.
project, but yeah, that makes sense. So, okay, George, you're good. Terrific, thanks, Sean. Very comprehensive. The next item on the agenda are a number of appointments. Dave, you want to walk us through? There are appointments and then the election warrant signing.
Sure. First appointment is for town accountant Sharon McPherson. This is, I lost my sheet. I just want to read what I put in the notes here. The board has the authority to appoint the town accountant for a period of up to 5 years. And when Sharon was hired, the law allowed for appointment of 1 or 3 years. She was appointed for 1 year at her last appointment, and I recommend an appointment of 3 years from this point on. Sharon has been a great addition to the financial team in Town Hall, and she's talented and continues to pursue the town accountant's certification. Her original start date with the town was November 2016, so she's been in the position 1 year and 8 months. I have some attached relative information about the finance director, accountant bylaw, the job description, a thank you letter from the moderator, and then the minutes from her last appointment.
I move the appointment for 3 years.
Second.
All in favor? Thanks, Sharon.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon.
Well done.
Thank you, I look forward to it.
We're running behind, otherwise we would discuss what a good job you're doing.
I want to talk about the capital project update that she's going to be working on, so.
Yeah, I'm gonna work with Sean on that.
The next appointments are for Council on Aging. Susan Pierce for a term to expire June, well, both are to expire June 15, 2021. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm halfway through this one, let me go. And Ann Panny Nichols for a term to expire June 15th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
With gratitude for their service, I believe they're both incumbents.
Yes, they are.
Terrific. Any discussion? All in favor?
We skipped Neil. You didn't know that.
I'm sorry. The Public Safety Committee, Neil McPherson to expire June 15th, 2021. And this is in Neil's capacity as resident, not as assistant chief.
Terrific. And last time this was on the agenda, hadn't been advertised properly. This time it is properly advertised and we're all
Yes.
set to go.
It's been more than 30 days and there were no other applicants.
Any discussion?
I'll move to appoint Neil McPherson to the Public Safety Committee for a term to expire June 15th, 2021.
All in favor? Thank you, Neil.
For building inspectors, we have Chris Canny here, if you have any questions about them. These three are all reappointments. John McGordy, wiring inspector, Thomas Frasca, plumbing and gas inspector, John Rose, deputy plumbing and gas inspector, with terms to expire June 15th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Perfect. Thanks, Chris.
So Chris, do you have a full complement of inspectors now? I know.
We have deputies for all.
Okay, great, good,
Terrific.
Properly staffed.
perfect, thanks.
I also want to congratulate Chris on his new role in Medfield as opposed to his role in Framingham. So he's the new commissioner in Medfield, full-time.
Are you still in Framingham too?
No.
No, 3 towns is 4 towns too many.
And I also did contact the office in Medfield and got the permission that the IG's office had recommended that we receive when somebody's working in both towns. So.
Just to carry that forward a little bit, it is important to have in place a structure so that when you're working for one community, that community pays, and when you're working for us, we pay. So we're not paying for work that you're doing for that community, and that community is not paying for work for our community. And in order to do that, the Inspector General had all these guidelines about record keeping, which I hope has been shared with you, so that you know you have to be meticulous. And if you're on the job in Sherborn and something urgent comes up in Medfield, you can't do the job here in Sherborn, even though it's urgent in Medfield. You have to, the time that you're here for Sherborn is the time for the projects in Sherborn.
I can say that we did discuss that prior to even being employed, and it's directly written in writing on his letter, and he's done an exemplary job keeping things separate with no complaints anywhere.
Well, this isn't about
No,
complaining.
I know, I just don't want to leave it hanging out there that there might be an issue.
No, I have no complaints at all about what you've been doing. It's just there was these series of issues with regard to another official in the town, and we got all these letters, and there were all kinds of uncertainties. And so the advice that we got from the state was, don't let these uncertainties get into the system. Build it right in from the beginning, that you get the consent and that you have the record keeping. I'm glad to see that's been done.
Great, thank you for doing that,
Yeah,
David.
it is great. And thanks for the compliance, Chris. For election workers, is Carol Marple here?
Yep.
Okay. You want to come up to the desk?
This is, I don't think we need it, because I'm going to move approval. We don't need a whole, we do this every year.
I love the sign, 10 inches. This is the same thing we do every year, election workers. The statute says that they will be appointed between June 15th and August 15th for one-year terms to begin September 1st. So you have before you my request, my list of election workers, the 3 relevant statutes, as well as notes from a conversation with the Secretary of State's Elections Division, and an election worker application. So I know sometimes in the past you have asked why there are people on the election worker list that don't live in Sherborn. So I'll answer that right up front. By and large, they're either people who are on staff in my office or people who lived in Sherborn and were election workers while we lived here, and I don't want to give them up just because they've moved out of town. So we keep them on the list, and they continue to work for us and do a great job. We also have 2 students on the list. I'd have more, but I only could acquire 2, and I can use up to 2 16 and 17-year-olds at a time per precinct. We only have 1 precinct. That means I can only use students, two 2 at a time, and because they're in school, they can only work the evening shift. So I usually use those students in the evening. It's a great experience for them, and they have always done a great job for me. They're very focused and very cognizant of the importance of serving as an election worker.
So can I move approval of the list as submitted by the town clerk entitled persons to be appointed as poll workers?
I'll move.
Any discussion?
No, though, I may have asked this question before, Carol. When I'm looking at the statute, it talks about appointing election officers, and it specifies particular titles of the election officers. And I forget what the answer to that was, but I don't think we were appointing people for particular titles, right?
If you look at the notes from a 2013 conversation with the Elections Division by phone, it answers that question.
Okay.
They said, and this is a direct quote, "It is permissible to appoint general election workers without specifying warden, deputy warden, clerk, deputy clerk, etc."
Okay, that's this thing that you highlighted there. Good, thanks. I'll probably ask it again another time. I just,
Okay.
I'm just surprised people aren't wanting all those wonderful titles. Deputy warden. Terrific. Any discussion? I'm going to be recusing myself because the last name on the list is Dr. Yan, which I'm related to, so I'll be recusing myself. Probably not necessary, but do we have a second on your motion?
Eric,
Great.
seconded.
I moved already.
it's already moved and seconded. We were in
Right.
discussion.
Discussion?
Ready to
All
vote?
in favor? Terrific. 4-0, 1 abstention.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Carol.
Thanks, Carol.
The next item is the warrant for the September 4th primary. And you have that in front of you, as well as
I don't
some
have-
relevant statutes.
I don't have one.
Move approval.
This is what, if George wants to see it, that's what it is.
I just hadn't.
Yeah, we can cut it down to your end
You
of the
should have
table.
had a draft in your
Yeah, it
packet.
didn't
No,
hit
there
our
was no draft.
packet.
There was no draft, but I did review it, and it's the same as what I've seen.
Here was this.
Okay.
It's the same as what I've seen in other communities. It covers all the offices. There's nothing left
It
out.
specifies we're electing the governor of this Commonwealth, in case anybody had thought it was another Commonwealth.
So you know how the process works for establishing a warrant for a state primary or election. The warrant actually comes from the state. We add our town seal and our hours, our locations, and they give us some choices of
I have no idea if that's.
everything from representative and general court and up is statewide. Everybody has those on the ballot. And then different towns in different districts have some additional pieces. We happen to have Middlesex Clerk of Court and the Middlesex Register of Deeds.
Carol, there's a listing for treasurer and receiver general. Is that the right title? It's just not a
Yes.
title I've
Yes, and
heard or
that's,
seen before.
I never saw that before either, but
Yeah.
that's how it came through from the state this time.
Great. Discussion? Move approval?
Motion's already been made.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
All right.
you.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Carol.
again.
We need to sign this one, or is there another one we need to sign?
That's the original in the folder.
In the
and-
folder, yeah. Borrow your pen.
Thanks, Carol.
So now we're at George Fisk.
No.
No?
Two other items before that.
Yeah, actually, I told George we'd get him in and out for within an hour, so any objection to moving George up?
That's good.
I'm looking for tickets to the Grange Bash since I,
You're out of luck, young fella. Well, thank you very much for letting me come in. I had sent a little write-up as to why I wanted to see you. I think you are aware that over recent past, considerable effort, time, and a little bit of financial resources have gone into the restoration of the memory statue, which is located, it's a Dahlin sculpted statue that's located in Central Burying Ground. And I have met with a number of different groups, most notably the Historical Commission, which has worked diligently to see its restoration to completion. And it was, there'd been some discussion about whether we might recognize the work that had been done there. One thing leading to another led us to think that maybe this could be a more significant event. And so I am here this evening asking you to do something I'm not sure the selectmen have ever done before. Certainly I don't recall of it. And that is to name a day in honor and recognition of a past resident of the town. My request is that the selectmen vote to name Sunday, September 30th, William Bradford Homer Dowse Day. And for those who don't know, he was a very significant personality in our town. He was born and raised here. And he was clearly one of our greatest benefactors. And one of the things that he was good enough to donate to the town was the War Memorial. We also are recognizing the fact that the memorial was given to honor those who fought and died in World War I. And interestingly enough, World War I concluded 100 years ago this fall. So what we would like very much to do is to have an event commemorating and honoring him, but also a discussion, a talk given about the restoration of the statue and its significance to the town. And this effort would be co-sponsored by 5 different organizations, I think maybe 6. The Sherborn Historical Commission, Historical Society, the Sherborn Cemetery Commission, the Sherborn Fund, the Veterans Agent, and I don't know if I've left anybody out, but
Library trustees?
library trustees as well. Of note, and the reason the library trustees would take a particular interest is because William Bradford Homer Dowse was the donor of the Dowse Library back in 1913, I believe. And so clearly he was a significant individual in our town, and we thought this was an opportune time to recognize him and the many gifts he made to the town.
So I would move to designate Sunday, September 30, 2018, as William Bradford Homer Dowse Day as requested.
Any questions?
I had one question. So since it's specifically similar to whatever, 2018, so it's not a reoccurring, it's just that one day of that one year? It's not every,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, and I have a question because we've got a comment from our town council that talks about the select board will be setting a precedent for similar requests in the future. I don't know how this sets a precedent. David, did you have any discussion with him about what he meant by that?
Well, I mean, it sets a process, but I don't see that it sets a bad precedent in the sense of,
But this doesn't in any way oblige us to name every
To
day of the
approve
year
future-
after different people and things like that, right? I mean, this is it could be a one-off situation based on
Right.
just the level of value and generosity of the gentleman.
right.
You're wondering when the Michael Giamo
No, I'm not
Memorial
wondering
Day
about
is?
that. No, I'm not wondering about that, Paul. What I'm actually doing is making a point to try to discourage people from coming in and asking for days for their favorite relatives and citizens. I don't think the selectmen should be turned into the Day Memorial Board.
They have to do a
But I don't have any problem voting in favor of this.
I think that was his
net present value calculation of the contributions they made to the town and equal Mr. Homer Dowse's.
There you go.
There you go.
That's our precedent. Good.
Terrific. We don't have a second. Second on the motion?
I'll second.
All in favor? Terrific. Thank you, George.
Very much, appreciate it.
Right. What are you worried about, the Homer Simpson Day? Is that?
There are other people who I think would be days if it looked like they could be a day.
The risk of it's one day, not a reoccurring annual thing.
Yeah, that's like Christmas.
Terrific. Sharon, you're up with the regular agenda item for a financial update.
Yeah, the only thing just want to let you know is that it's the most wonderful time of the year. We had auditors in here on Monday and Tuesday. Everything went well with payroll and accounts payable, and Heidi and I have been working closely with them. Nothing, no items to be concerned about. They're coming back in October, And the question I have for you is, when do you want audited financial statements available?
Sooner rather than later, so that we
Okay.
can borrow money this fall, in case we want to borrow money this fall.
So they're coming out the second week in October, so should I say that we'd like our audited financial statements by the end of October?
I usually tell them that they need to have a draft by Thanksgiving, and we would like a final by New Year's. But even that's kind of late in some towns.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of late.
I mean, they asked, so I wanted to get your input.
I would
By
say-
Homer Bradford Douse Day, we should have these.
That sounds good.
Actually, speaking of the audit, one question I have, were
Sure.
you looking into, looking at different audit firms?
Yep. I mean, we've already signed an engagement letter for this year,
Okay,
but, so it would have to be the following year, but yeah, I'm gonna look into that.
great.
Do you think we
Yeah,
ought,
that's a good question.
Yeah.
I didn't-
It's always
Yeah,
good to
that
just,
definitely
I
came
said,
up.
asking if they were looking at other audit firms
Yeah.
and getting a,
Yes, because that came, advisory brought that up as well.
Are we auditing, I think there'd been a process of auditing kind of at random different accounts. Are we doing that in addition to just the general audit?
You mean like
Different
the
offices.
cash audit from
Yeah.
each office?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do that, and they also do,
Yeah.
like procurement. They pull at random various contracts and look at the process and how the award went and everything.
So similar to what they've done in the past.
I mean, one thing I'm really proud of is that they reviewed accounts receivable, and Nancy's books and my books, tie, zero reconciling items, so that's really
Great.
good.
Thank you, and thanks, Nancy.
Yes, definitely. Okay.
Terrific. Anything else? Next item, is there somebody from the planning board? The next item is a
I can do this.
ADA administrative requirement policy for the open space and recreation plan.
Right.
I thought somebody from planning board was going to present.
Gino ended up with a conflict and asked me if I thought that I
it's
could
pretty
present it.
straightforward.
Okay, yes.
So I was just going to read what he had written as an introduction.
Terrific.
One of the requirements for an open space and recreation plan is an ADA ADA is American with Disabilities Act, self-evaluation and transition plan. Most of that plan is complete. However, one component of this is an administrative section that documents that we do not discriminate against persons with disabilities, and that we have a grievance procedure for those that believe that they have been discriminated against. We have such a policy in the personnel bylaw, but we don't have anything regarding town facilities or public facilities, and this establishes such a procedure. And this was, as Gino and Marion Nutra and John Higley have talked about, this is one of the things that needed to be done to feed into the plan. And attached is the actual wording and the letter that officially confirmed that I was the appointed as the ADA coordinator or serves as the ADA coordinator for the town, and that was communicated to the state. So those are the things that they needed.
So if I could, just to expand on something, this isn't just about establishing a grievance procedure in connection with our open space plan. There are recreation facilities in town that are included in our open space plan that are not ADA compliant. And in particular, I recall being pulled aside at one of my meetings with the Baker-Polito administration, in which they said, how come Sherborn doesn't have any recreational trails? And that there's state money available, and doesn't Sherborn want some of that money? Well, it turns out that recreational trails means ADA compliant trails that people with wheelchairs can use. And we have made not a whole lot of progress in making our trail system ADA compliant. So I'm hopeful that, yes, we need to have a policy. And by the way, I have some language changes I want to propose for that. Yes, we need to have a policy. But beyond the policy, I'd like to see a commitment to actually take that additional step and make these, as many of our recreation facilities available to all the people and not just to the able-bodied people.
Sean?
If I could real quick, the rail trail, which is part of this allocation of complete streets, will be fully ADA compliant, connecting to Holliston and Milford Rail Trail, as well as the parking lot coming off of Whitney Street. And the playground's ADA compliant.
And there were improvements to Farm Pond at one point. I don't know if they were completely
And there's ongoing
compliant.
improvements to all the ball fields, but he mentioned the trail, I just wanted to mention that the rail trail will be built. The parking lot and the trail, and the connector between the parking lot.
The new,
ADA compliance.
the new docks as well.
There was proposed funding for $700,000 in the environmental bond bill for the trail system, and it did not make it.
No.
This
So
one's covered under-
that's $200,000, and it covers a variety of things. So the main portion of the trail funding that we were hoping to get didn't come to pass this year.
Paul, how do you want to handle your amendments? We want to have a motion to approve this language, and then you've submitted an amendment with that language?
Yeah, the amendment,
I move
just,
to approve this language.
Second. You want to move to amend it?
well, yeah, I want to move to amend it. So in the second paragraph under step 1 process, where it says that it will be forwarded to the appropriate town agency, I'd like to insert the words, having jurisdiction over the location complained of, if any. So in other words, if a complaint is filed that there's a ADA problem in connection with the library, that the library will be the agency consulted.
So having jurisdiction over the subject facility?
Now, having jurisdiction over the location
Oh,
complained
the
of,
location complained of, okay.
if any.
Great. I would second that amendment. Let's see, procedurally, we have to vote on the amendment first?
Well, it's when we do all of Paul's amendments.
That's it.
That's it.
Oh,
I would move to approve this section 2 with the amended language as proposed by Paul.
second.
I did a question. It's still, David Williams is still the ADA coordinator, no matter who is. So if it goes under a school, which often has its own jurisdiction, David's still the ADA coordinator.
That's
correct?
right, yes.
Under Paul's language,
This is
okay.
informational copies.
Okay.
And what's the, mechanically, what's gonna happen? This language is going to go into our open space plan in some
Yes.
way?
Yes.
Just the highlighted language here with the
No,
amendment, right?
the rest of that is part of the document.
Well, the rest of that's part of our administration plan, right?
Right.
But that's not part of our open space and recreation plan.
This whole thing is the open space recreation plan, these
This
two
whole thing
pages.
is- Okay.
There's several pages that,
And what we're
Gino
doing is
submitted.
adding that paragraph 2 at the top of the page. The part that's, I can't read the number, but
Yeah, I'm
it
not,
says public notification and grievance procedure. That's a new amendment to the open space and recreation plan. And we're voting to insert that into the open space and recreation plan.
we're inserting this language into the open space and recreation plan.
Right.
This language.
Just the outline language.
Right.
Yes.
The rest of this stuff appears in some other document.
It appears in the open space and recreation plan already.
we're just adding this.
Fine.
These are pages from the draft open space and recreation plan.
Really? It looks like the
I
personnel.
thought this was from the personnel manual. David, do you know this language that's been highlighted, the public notification grievance procedures, that's from the personnel manual?
No, it's the equivalent process, but it's not the exact language.
Okay.
I don't know, it probably doesn't matter, but it's just confusing. You get two pieces of paper with language circulated, no numbers, no sense of where they're from, no sense of whether the rest of the language on this page is something that already exists. I have no idea what I'm looking at, honestly. The language is fine, but
There were 4 pages that they submitted that went together. There was an email explanation, and then there is an introduction page. And then this, the appointment of the ADA coordinator, and then this section. I viewed them as being,
I see the email.
In
I see-
order.
I see where you're appointed as the ADA coordinator, David,
What was not attached
I
was the
see a-
full open space and recreation plan.
or just any indication that this is existing language or not existing language. I mean,
The,
we should vote this, but it's,
the cover article says we have such a policy as part of the personnel bylaw. And I'm assuming that's where this language came from, but is an assumption.
that's what I thought. Yeah, okay.
the process, yeah, I mean,
the
there
rest
were
of
some
this
word
is-
changes.
It's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant, and we don't know where it's from. Okay.
Well, it's from the personnel bylaw.
It was copied to put in open space plan.
So, yeah. All right.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor? Terrific. Okay, next item on the agenda, the TA and selectmen's reports. David, do you have a town administrator report?
Yeah, just quickly, an eligible buyer was located for the affordable unit at Leland Farms, so that sale is moving forward. There's another unit that I think we gave you a heads up about that is in foreclosure again, and we'll be working with council to stay on top of that, just to make sure we don't lose the affordable status, and we're scheduling an executive session on August 16th to discuss that further. And then the farm pond docks those were put out to bid, award was made, and the vendor has scheduled an install date of August 14th and 15th. It'll take 2 days to put them in, and that's, just as a reminder, that's a joint project between Recreation and Selectman Office down at Farm Pond. And the new docks are ADA compatible. They actually touch the beach so that you can go from the beach onto the docks. It was not a launch area.
You can get a running start. Dive off.
That's all I had.
Terrific. Any selectmen reports?
Chuck, I have something. Just as a follow-up to our last meeting, that where the developer from 41 North Main came in, been talking to a few people, and I was talking to Eric before the meeting about having the selectmen set up or some representatives of the selectmen have a joint meeting with the planning board, Roger, the water commissioners, the Board of Health, and whoever else may kind of hash out who it is that's going to be included. But rather than we said to them, come back to us again, maybe we go back to the developer and say, this is, for us to consider this, let's be proactive with it and say, this is what the
This is
town
what we
wants.
want, right.
And I think we want to get the key players in this being, like I said, planning, Board of Health, us, to sit down, and the Downtown Water Committee, and say, what, ideally, this is a time that we could potentially get something that we've been looking for in the town, and I think we could take the lead on that from the from the select board, and get a group together to really come up with our goals for that property.
The one thing, I agree with that. The one thing, if I could speak like a lawyer, if we create a committee, then it's subject to the open meeting law. And then you gotta keep minutes, and you gotta post meetings, and it becomes very difficult working with the developer to have all of this
Right.
procedure. So instead of us actually voting.
I wasn't asking
something-
for a committee. I was saying I think we should coordinate it with some other board. A couple representatives of this board could have a meeting with a couple representatives from these other boards and
Yes.
have a brainstorming session.
Yes, you should go ahead and do that.
I do believe the select board is gonna really have to take a lead and to make an opinion on something like this. I don't think it's something we can just defer to either commissioners or health or whatever else. The one thing I've learned over 10 years of working on the Downtown Water Committee is you'll hear people say there's a health threat in downtown, and some people say there isn't a health threat. And to some degree, they're both right. You'll hear some people say it'll threaten development, some people say it won't threaten development, and to some extent, they're both right. There's a lot of polarizing opinions about the downtown water, and you pretty much, people will latch on to whatever opinion that supports what they want to support anyway. At some point, I think we will actually have to make the best recommendation for the town.
Can we put on the agenda for, I don't know, our first meeting in September maybe, for a discussion of that project and any update and any feedback maybe that George or whoever is going to be meeting would have, and that might be
That'd be
a chance
a
for
good
us
yeah.
to hear whatever recommendations there are and weigh in as a board.
Yeah, and the developer has already contacted requesting a date.
And asked to come on.
Wanted to come
the
back.
agenda, so.
Yeah,
I'm working on a date.
That's why I'd like to get
either
out
this
in
is a
front of it.
date- Yeah,
Right.
either this is a date with the developer, but I think it's really a date before we talk to
Right,
the
yeah,
developer.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay.
And I think, and Eric, if you're willing to work with me, I'd like to, Eric and I to take the lead on it and try to put this together, if that's okay with the,
It doesn't mean, David, he couldn't show up, but I think if this is the process, which sounds to me like a reasonable process, we ought to have a chance for George and Eric and whoever else has put their heads together to socialize that with this board, and then, you know, have a united
exactly.
sense, if we can, of what the issues or recommendations are, and then hear back at a later date, get a response from the developer, if that's possible.
Right.
I mean, we heard a couple of recommendations even at that session we had.
Right,
The
exactly.
last time Historic was concerned about something, there were other people who were concerned about things. There's a lot of moving parts here.
Exactly.
That's a great suggestion, though, George, huh?
It's a really good suggestion.
Eric, you and George willing to work on that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Terrific.
And I'll be in touch with you, Roger.
I think you've just been tapped on the shoulder. Any other select person reports? Terrific. Next item on the agenda is the board will now consider entering into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, parens 3, to discuss strategy with respect to potential litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the town and the chair so declares. Library, I do so declare. The board will not return to open session. I need a second and a roll call vote.
Second.
Motion is seconded by Selectman Morrell. Having a second, we'll now have a roll call vote. Mr. Durensis.
Aye.
Mr. Morrell.
Aye.
Mr. Giamo.
Aye.
Mr. Yan, aye. Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Having passed by a vote of 5-0 at 8:20 PM, the open session is closed, and we are now in executive session.